Hello, everyone. Welcome to week 6 of the Collective. I'm Connie. I'm filling in for Brian. Tonight we have Matt, Gabe, and Greg. And tonight we're excited to dive into chapters 7 and 8. If you have anything you want to share online, any questions, any comments, anything you want to share, go ahead and type those in, and I will try to relay them throughout the night. But before we do that, let's go ahead and pray. Lord, thank you for this time. Thank you for this book and how we get to dive into it, how we get to hear different perspectives, and how we get to be excited about it. And through everything we read tonight, everything we study, we know that in the end, you win. And we praise you for that. Yes. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Amen. So, last week we had chapter 6, which was probably toward the end of Daniel's life. He was mid-80s. And then we have chapter 7. Rewind time a little bit. So now we're back to the first year of King Belshazzar, king of Babylon. So tonight, if you don't know, we're doing chapters 7 and 8. They're both dreams, visions, prophetic seeings of the future, I guess. Yeah. So in chapter 7 starts in the first year of Belshazzar. Chapter 8 is in the third year of King Belshazzar's reign. And a good question is, like, why are we going back in time? Well, I mean, if you think about it, like, we have all of these first 6 chapters. It's kind of like the narrative of Daniel's life. It's the narrative of all the kings, and it's his interaction with the kings. And again, it's in the other language. It's in Aramaic instead of Hebrew. So it starts out in Hebrew in the beginning of Daniel, and then it goes to Aramaic, which is kind of like the language that, everyone was speaking in the empire at the time. So that's what kind of the courtroom talk. That's why it was written.
Language.
And then it switches back now into Hebrew, so we can kind of maybe see that this is written more for the Hebrew crowd as opposed to.
But it does it in
Jewish
8
crowd.
though, right? 7's still in Aramaic and 8 is in Hebrew.
I think
I think it switches in 7,
Maybe
7:2 maybe. I'll check on that.
I was thinking it was
Yeah. So we have chapter 7, first year of King Belshazzar's reign. Daniel has a dream and visions, and just crazy things happen. So first we have, the 4 winds were churning up the great sea in front of Daniel, and then 4 great beasts rose from the sea. And the first great beast was like a lion. It wasn't a lion, but it was like a lion. Had wings, but then the wings were torn off. And then it stood on 2 feet like a human, and then it was given a mind of a human. So that was the first beast. And the second beast was like a bear, and it was on one of its sides. It was raised up on one of its sides and had 3 ribs in its mouth, and it was told, get up and eat your fill of flesh. And then the third beast was like a leopard. It had 4 wings, and it had 4 heads, and it was given authority to rule. So these are pretty crazy-looking beasts. And again, Daniel says it was like these animals. So it wasn't necessarily a lion, a bear, and a leopard, but it was like them. That was like what the description,
It's the best he could do.
Yeah,
that's right.
How
Language.
would we tell people, I had this crazy dream. What did it look like? I'm like, oh, goodness.
Kind of like a
Kind
bear
of like these things? Yeah.
Yeah.
But then there came the 4th beast, and there is no likeness.
Yes.
It is its own terrifying and frightening thing. Had large iron teeth, and it devoured its victims. Had 10 horns, and then another horn, a little horn, came up from among them, and 3 of the horns were like moved to the side, or something happened to them because this little horn was right there, and it was the weirdest of all the horns. It had eyes, and it had a mouth that spoke boastfully. And then, continuing on in Daniel chapter 7, we see that the Ancient of Days took his throne in the throne room, and he is this incredible figure, and fire was coming out of everything. His throne was on fire. The wheels of his throne were on fire. Just fire was just, whoo! And, this fire is a symbol of God's judgment, so all throughout Scripture, so that makes sense. And then, the horn continued to speak. Daniel kept looking until the beast was slain and its body was destroyed. And Daniel was kind of just like disturbed from all of this. And, there was one like a son of man who came with the clouds of heaven, and he went into the Ancient of Days, and he was given authority, glory, and sovereign power. And then Daniel was like, I don't know what's happening, so he approached someone, and he said, what does this mean? So like in the past, we see Daniel has interpreted other people's dreams and visions, and he's like, God, please interpret this for me and through me, and God does, like miraculously. That's what happens. And right here, it's kind of a similar thing. Maybe this is like the inside of him appealing to God. And so the interpretation was given. The four great beasts are the four kings that will rise from the earth, but the people of the Most High will receive the kingdom and possess it forever and ever and ever. And then he's like, what about the fourth beast, which was crazy and had iron teeth and bronze claws? Like, who is this? What about the 10 horns? What about the one little horn with the eyes and the mouth? This horn, it was waging war against the holy people and defeating them until the Ancient of Days came and pronounced judgment. Mm-hmm. Well, in verse 23, we see this person, this figure, gave Daniel the explanation. The fourth beast is the fourth kingdom that will appear on earth. It will be different from all the other kingdoms. It will devour the whole earth, trampling it down and crushing it. The 10 horns are 10 kings who will come, and the one little horn will subdue 3 little kings, speaking against the Most High and oppressing his holy people. The holy people will be delivered into his hands for a time, times and half a time, and we all know what that means, of course. We have ideas, but anyways, overall, God, the Most High, he wins, and his kingdom will last forever. And then at the end of this, in verse 28, this is the end of the matter. I, Daniel, was deeply troubled by my thoughts, and my face turned pale. But I kept the matter to myself. Mm-hmm. So that was just one vision. That was a lot.
Halftime.
Halftime, yeah. And then I guess I can just continue on.
Yeah, sure.
Chapter 8. So, chapter 8. 2 years into the future. What?
I said you're doing great.
Oh, thank you.
On to chapter 8.
I appreciate that. In chapter 8, the third year of King Belshazzar's reign, that's 2 years later, he saw himself in the citadel of Susa, which is a couple 100 miles away from Babylon. And there was a ram with 2 horns. One was longer than the other, but the shorter one grew up later. And then the ram was charging everywhere, conquering everything, like, I'm the big ram. And then there was a goat. And a goat came, and he had a prominent horn between his eyes, coming from the west, crossing the whole earth without touching it, and basically attacked the ram. And the ram couldn't do anything. It was powerless, and the goat became very great. And at the height of its power, the large horn of this shaggy goat was broken off, and in its place 4 prominent horns grew up toward the 4 winds of heaven. Again, that picture of the 4 winds of heaven, 4 winds of earth. Anyways, out of one of these 4 horns came another horn, which started small, but again grew in power. That's a theme going through here. Small horns growing in power, like small things, and these beasts are, sometimes start off small and they get bigger. And again, we'll see later, and spoiler alert, that these are kingdoms, and kingdoms always have to start somewhere. This one horn grew in power, and it was doing all these terrible things, awful things. It was setting itself up to be as great as the commander of the army of the Lord. It was taking away daily sacrifice and, speaking against God. And then in 13, Daniel heard of a holy one speaking, and another one speaking to him. How long will it be before the vision is fulfilled, the vision concerning the daily sacrifice and all the other bad things that are happening? And he said, it'll take 2,300 evenings and mornings, then the sanctuary will be reconsecrated. And then Daniel, once again, is like, I'm trying to understand it. And there was someone in front of me who looked like a man, and I heard a man's voice from somewhere else saying, Gabriel! I was like, I know that name.
Huh.
Yeah, that wasn't me, though. It was a different.
It wasn't you. That was,
no, it was the angel, not me. Anyways, Gabriel, tell this man the meaning of the vision. So once again, Daniel is here. He's receiving this vision and also receiving the interpretation, which is, that's just how God works.
Yeah.
He's all about order. So anyways, while he was speaking to me, I was in a deep sleep. He raised me to my feet. I'm going to tell you what happens later in the time of wrath, because the vision concerns the appointed time of the end. This 2-horned ram that you saw represents Media and Persia, the Medo-Persian Empire. And the shaggy goat represents the king of Greece. And the large horn between its eyes is the first king. And then the 4 horns that replace that one broken off that was broken off represents the 4 kingdoms that will emerge. And then the later part of the reign, when rebels have become completely wicked, a fierce-looking king, a master of intrigue, will arise, and this will be that small horn. He's deceitful, he's awful, he does very bad things, he considers himself superior, and when people feel secure, he will destroy many and take his stand against the Prince of Princes. Yet he will be destroyed, not by human hands, but by God. So in 26, the vision of the evenings and mornings that has been given to you is true, but seal up the vision, for it concerns the distant future. And Daniel was once again exhausted, just overwhelmed by the power of God inhabiting in his mind, really, just showing him all these incredible things. And he lay exhausted for several days.
Yeah.
So, once again, appalled by what he saw, but thankful to God that he can be this mouthpiece.
Yeah.
So that's kind of chapters 7 and 8 in a long nutshell.
You can feel that
grew and grew.
heaviness.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As you read it.
You know, I wonder if Daniel's like, I liked it so much better being on the other side of these dreams. You know, to feel, because it seems like with Nebuchadnezzar and the different dreams we've been able to see, it's never good for the one having the dream or the vision. It's very disturbing.
Yep.
You know, and even though Daniel knew that, you know, he was faithful to God and God was faithful to him through all the things that had happened, it's still to see this that vividly and to know this has to happen this way and that our people will have to suffer in this. That's just all part of it. They've been suffering in exile. They've been corrected by foreign powers many times, but then just to see this unfolding in these kingdoms, it had to be just.
How did Daniel figure out the ones before? Did God, I mean, just off the top of my head, did God give him the same vision? I mean, or did it, you know what I mean? Is he standing there and did it just kind of, what did that look like for Daniel?
Yeah.
The original ones. So these, obviously, he was having like a dream, but were the first ones similar, happening in the moment? Or I don't know. I never thought about that before.
But that had to be just, because even if you're going to just interpret it, you have to
You still have
enter
to,
in it like that. And say,
yeah, you
this
have
is
to.
it's just not you. It's
Right.
interesting. He's having the dream and vision, then he's in it at the same time, interacting with this crazy thing that's happening.
Yeah. Which he didn't do the first time.
No,
So that would be
right.
different.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So, I mean, at least one of the visions when the king said, hey, someone needs to not only interpret it, but know what the vision was. Like he seems
that's
to
right.
have very intimate knowledge of what the vision was
Right.
in order to interpret it. So
Somehow he had to get that information. So what did that?
This kind of goes along with interpretation. Sharon says the word horn in other parts of the Bible means strength. Is this a different word and a different meaning?
Yes, and kind of no. It can mean what I've read. One said like immortality, like a god, or royalty, strength. There's it's a high kingship. It's a high place.
So definitely kind of like similarities with
Yeah.
with strength as other places in the Bible too.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
So a lot of this is very symbolic and very, I don't know, it's almost like otherworldly. Like I've never personally had a vision, anything like this. Like I had dreams of big spiders before and dinosaurs, but that's about it.
Well, this
Things
kind
that I already have seen before.
yeah, this.
So how would we go about doing interpretation of this kind of stuff?
I think Daniel kind of worked with what he knew. The lion, Babylon was known to be like a roaring lion. It was powerful, but like Matt said, it was like a lion. It wasn't. These things were not a lion. It was like a lion.
Part of my research actually showed up. They uncovered in Babylon like a lion with wings, like
Really?
either sculpture or inscription or something like that. So that was a definite thing, possibly an allusion to King Nebuchadnezzar himself.
Yes.
I mean, we can talk about that more, if you want to.
I think that's interesting.
A lot to
'cause,
talk about.
the lion stands upright and thinks like a human, and the human lion got on all fours. as Nebuchadnezzar was humbled in that.
Yeah. It was also talking about, like, after this, the first three beasts were allowed to continue. I mean, it was more so probably talking about the different nations were kind of like taken over by the other nations, like the next big nation. So they were able to continue. But that also might have been for Nebuchadnezzar himself, because there are definite similarities in chapter 7 about, with wings like an angel, and his wings were torn off. And so, I mean, is this being given the mind of a human, just like Nebuchadnezzar was after those sevens?
Yeah.
I mean, and it definitely, we believe this is talking about the Babylonian Empire.
Yeah. The churning sea, I think, is interesting too. The power and just the chaos. They would use that often, like a.
Well, it's an allusion to the creation narrative that the Babylonians believed. They believed that the earth was formed from chaos, but out of the water.
Okay.
And so that represents chaos, fear. It was an understood idea to them, where for us it's just wind and water, to them all of this had, which is really the big, I mean, I've never been a huge fan of apocalyptic prophecy, or just apocalyptic, I guess is the actual noun. Because it's like, what, you go all the way around the bush to tell me what? You know what I mean? Was it intended for me to see this as a guide to future events,
right,
so that I can, but I'm not going to be around for most of this. If I'm putting myself in Daniel's spot, or the original hearer's spot. I'm not going to be around for most of this. Right. So, or is it simply just to give me comfort that God is in control and God's going to win in the end? And if so, do I need to see? So, I don't know. I really struggle with that, because it's so hard to pinpoint exactly what we're talking about, unless Scripture makes it clear, which it does.
Thankfully,
through some of the interpretation.
Yeah,
it makes it somewhat clear. But the horns, we kind of think we know what they mean, the two different little horns in 7 and 8. And then you get into Revelation, which I know you're going to in a bit too, and you're like, what am I supposed to do with this? It's so,
I wonder if for the hearers then, for those in exile, God still got this, and He's gonna win at the end, because it says the angel told Daniel, just seal this up. This is future events. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
But then, just the prince of princes here. And God, then in Revelation, it talks about the returning king, the King of Kings. It's a very similar story in Revelation 13. We'll get into it in a little bit. Yeah. I mean, a lot of similarities there in this apocalyptic. That's after Christ, though. So it's that still telling the people, God still got this in the midst of all the crazy things happening to us. There's still going to be rulers, and Satan's still alive, and Antichrist, and all these things are going to happen. But at the end, I still love you, and I got this.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm kind of with you, Matt. It's like, can we just go to the interpretation, and what does all this mean? Just tell me.
Well, in some ways, the cool thing about the prophecy is it meant something to the original hearers, but it meant even more to those who come after it's come to pass.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
makes
that
more sense.
Makes more sense. So you can
more real.
You can appreciate God's planning, I guess, with that I'm going to tell you this now, you're going to write it down, and then it's going to come true several hundred years later, and then you're going to be able to look back. Those people aren't. The original hearers aren't, but we are now, that we can read it again.
We're the
later.
benefactors.
We're the larger benefactors.
Yeah. Daniel was bearing the burden.
Yeah. And at the time, like, we have this nation that's not a nation, who's supposed to bring about this great blessing to the world. And they're like, how do we do this if we're scattered and destroyed? And right here, Daniel is writing these things that he's been told to write. And he's like, hey, God will bring you back.
Yeah, that's a good point. Very valid
this
point.
This will be done in God's name. Just hope.
In Daniel chapter 4, after the dream is fulfilled with King Nebuchadnezzar, this verse says this. 7 times, this is in Nebuchadnezzar's context, but it says 7 times will pass for you until you acknowledge that the Most High is sovereign over all kingdoms on earth and gives them to anyone he wishes.
Sovereignty.
Sovereignty again.
Always.
What about the bear?
What about that bear?
He's a little north of Babylon, right? He's the Medo-Persian guy.
So yeah, originally I think the Medes were the bigger. They had more of everything, and the Persians kind of they aligned themselves, and then the Persians kind of took over and became this like this almost like humped bear. Like they're talking about one side's bigger than the other, so you have the Medes and the Persians coming together, and looks like a bear, 3 ribs in its mouth.
Yeah, Lydia, Egypt, and Babylon. Right, that's what they say. Just that, get up and eat your fill of flesh. That's pretty. That wouldn't be a great vision to see.
Yeah, and who's saying that?
Yes,
That's a great question.
Yes.
Is this once again back to the sovereignty of God?
Yeah.
Like God saying, "You evil bear creature, do what you need to do."
It was told. It says it was told. Get up and eat your flesh by who?
How do we feel about that? You were asking that when we were sitting up here before we got started. How do you feel about a God telling this beast, this bear, to get up and eat your fill of my people?
Yes.
Basically, or
that is a. We're so limited.
Yeah.
Kind of like Daniel, but even more so. Like, I don't get it nor like it. But God's sovereign.
I mean, how did the Jewish people end up in this position in the first place?
Yes, exactly right.
And God took that protection away from them because they were in a constant cycle of disobedience.
Fine.
I think that.
No, you're right. I just put myself in that. So now the consequences are because I caused the consequence. No, I went real quick there, and I just fine.
Yeah. So the cycle's still happening, right?
Yeah, it is.
We're still in the cycle.
In all of us. Yes.
So who's the leopard? The one that looks like the leopard. What are they saying?
I don't know. I keep picturing VeggieTale characters and all these things. I just can't not.
Greece, right?
Greece.
Kingdom of Greece, Alexander the Great.
Yep.
Why the leopard? Isn't it because Alexander the Great moved fast?
Yeah.
He died young, so he didn't have a lot of time.
Well, and that's part's in here, right? Because where is that part? It talks about how he just kind of fell away or whatever.
Right.
Referring to the fact that
Because
then his 4 sons, right, took over.
Generals.
He had four generals.
Yeah,
That's right.
And there were 4 generals, and they fought each other pretty hard. It sounds like that was a bloody mess.
Oh, it says the goat became very great, but at the height of its power, the large horn was broken off. Yeah, he was the goat, right? Not the leopard.
Well, both.
We mixing our metaphors.
Well, he was leopard here
Yeah.
and goat there.
and then goat there.
Yep.
Okay.
I would want just consistency in the dreams, please.
I'd rather be a leopard than a goat. But,
Can I-
Can I pick my animal?
Yeah, exactly. So what about that 4th beast?
Scary.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to
Iron
run into
teeth.
him in the woods.
No.
And that was Rome, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's the iron teeth. It's like the 10 toes that were on a statue.
Right.
So you had the
From
gold, and then you had
From
the
chapter
Medo-Persian.
2, right?
Yeah, and then Rome was the one at the end to crush and devour its victims. Wow.
So are we going to get into premillennial? Do we have time for all that?
Because we're only at the beginning of 7 still. And
Well, I mean, eventually we will. But that idea is that is still, if you're premillennial,
yes,
and you believe that Christ is going to return, then there will be a 1,000-year reign. You would interpret that 4th beast as still having a presence.
Right.
It may look different. Rome technically is gone. Romans are gone. There are no, but they would put the European Union in place of the 10 toes. Are there 10 countries? Well, Britain's out now.
right.
So
in the
European Union,
right in the
But
I know
one
we're not in it.
currency.
we're not in it, no.
So that would be where the Antichrist would come out of the east. Would be out of that European Union. It would be how they would
The
look
little
at it
horn
today.
would come, yeah,
Okay.
right. Because in 7, the little horn is considered to be the Antichrist.
Right.
In 8, the little horn is, you say it,
Antiochus Epiphanes.
yeah, that dude.
Antiochus is what I would say. But I think he's
Antiochus.
probably right. He's one of the generals. He's one of the generals from the goat. Isn't
He
that right?
was?
Yeah, I think he's...
No, because he's like 200 years later.
Yeah, he's in the 100s.
Yeah.
BC.
So there is a huge gap of time
Oh,
between the four heads of the leopard, or the. Now you got me all confused on my animals. Lions and tigers and bears, oh my. But when the little horn appears in chapter 8, it's a couple hundred years later chronologically.
okay.
How else would it be? It'd have to be chronologically.
Yeah.
Anyway, but yeah, there's a big gap of time when that Antiochus Epiphanes, he said it,
Yeah.
appears. Yeah.
Some people have asked before we move on, what did the ribs represent? And then any symbolism as to the four wings. And then there is a question about the visions interpreted. Are they somewhat like the visions John had in Revelation? So
Yes.
maybe the ribs and the four wings first. And then
You tackle the ribs?
Yeah, the ribs, some scholars think it's Babylon, Egypt, and Lydia were the three things that the Medo-Persian bear devoured.
Yeah.
It wasn't the only, but that was,
conquered.
conquered,
The biggest
because those
ones
were
around.
eat your flesh, eat your fill, and that's what they think those are.
There are others that simply think it means that he didn't go hungry.
Yeah, you know you
Did
want.
not.
Yeah,
He
no.
had his fill. But yeah,
I'd say also the four. Honestly, whenever you see like four winds, the four wings, like it kind of means the completeness, as in like if it says the four corners of the earth, that means metaphorically the entire earth. So,
which
I mean,
Babylon,
which Babylon, like they
conquered,
conquered
controlled,
most of the known world to them to that time. And again, this is apocalyptic literature. This is very metaphoric and
well, but
not-
if
not
this,
literal, I guess,
if
yeah.
this is Nebuchadnezzar, the wings were torn off of him when he was sent out as a wild animal.
Right.
Right. But then he was lifted back up again on his 2 feet, and his mind was given back to him. So this is, if that's what that is, then that's pretty clear that that's what we're talking about, a person even,
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
just a kingdom, but a
Yeah.
person even.
then also
Yeah.
the leopard had four wings.
So it's
Just doubly, it's swift. Alexander the Great.
Well, it didn't touch the
conquering.
ground. It didn't
Yeah.
touch the ground. It was so fast.
Right.
Yeah.
What was the other question?
relating it into, are they somewhat like the visions John had in Revelation?
Yeah, Revelation 13, just let me hit this quick. If you look at Revelation 13, just let's look at the first 8 verses. It says, the dragon stood on the shore of the sea, there's the sea again, and saw a beast coming out of the sea. It had 10 horns and 7 heads, and 10 crowns on its horns. And on each had a blasphemous name. The beast I saw resembled a leopard, but had feet like those of a bear and a mouth like that of a lion. So you've got the lion, the bear, and the leopard all together again. The beast I saw resembled a leopard, but had feet like those of a bear and a lion. The dragon came. The dragon gave the beast its power and its throne and great authority. So they were saying that would be Satan giving this beast, this hybrid beast, the power. One of the heads of the beast seemed to have a fatal wound, but the fatal wound had been healed. And the whole world was filled with wonder and followed the beast. That's the Antichrist piece. People worshiped the dragon because he had given authority to the beast. They also worshiped the beast and asked, who is like the beast? Who can wage war against it? And then it goes in deeper about how it blasphemes God. It's like the little horn with the loud mouth. Same type of thing there again.
Who can wage war against
Yeah.
the great beast?
It says,
The Lamb.
yes.
Yes.
Yes. It was given power to wage war against God's holy people and to conquer them, and it was given authority over every tribe, people, language, and nation. All inhabitants of the earth will worship the beast. All those names who have not been written in the Lamb's book of life, the Lamb who was slain from the creation of the world. I mean, it gets deeper than that, but there's a lot of similarities with the first part of Revelation. And this, I just think that's interesting because this is after Christ. This is written. It's still that, yep, it's been paid for. It's done. I'm still in control. It's coming.
That's good
I'll need to
stuff.
talk for a little bit. Let someone else talk. I've been jabbering up a storm.
I mean, what about the one like a son of a man? I mean, that seems pretty straightforward. If you can take it straightforward, or you can. I mean, there have been different interpretations over the years. What about your thoughts? Do you have any? I mean, I know you do.
I do, but I'll let someone else have a thought.
No, I'm thinking it's Jesus. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know why we'd have to
Yeah, I agree.
come up with something other than
Right.
him. I mean, he was given all power and authority and all that, so it just makes
Came with clouds. That's
yeah,
imagery associated with
Right.
deity all throughout the Old
Yeah.
Testament.
yeah.
So Jesus, all right, check. Done.
You know, the thing with the question I had, though, when I was reading this on the Ancient of Days, was the throne and then the wheels. I never pictured a throne with wheels. I picture the throne of God, but I don't picture it continuing to be active and moving, but it is, right? That's what this...
Yeah, what I've read is that the symbolism is that his judgment is everywhere. So
Right.
the throne's on fire, the wheels are on fire, there's a fire flowing underneath it, and it's moving around, so his judgment covers the earth, basically.
Yeah.
He's able to be everywhere all at once. That the wheels make it mobile.
Yeah.
But all this just seems so cartoonish to me.
I'm like,
After
why not a chariot,
studying
but-
this, it's just you picture an old guy with a white beard and I don't know. Yeah.
It was probably kind of like a chariot, because and actually in the ancient Near East, like the thrones of kings and gods were either like if they were thrones of kings, like they did often have wheels,
Okay.
kind of like a chariot.
Yeah.
And I forget where it is. There are other places where God's throne in the Old Testament is shown to have wheels. Ezekiel 1 and Ezekiel 10. There's like a chariot throne that's more fully described there.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess I would thought, why not say chariot, but what?
Right.
Why talk about leopards
Like,
with wings?
In my mind, it's it's like a throne with itty bitty wings or itty bitty wheels, but it's probably big wheels.
Yes.
He rode on a big wheel.
A big wheel.
Okay.
Flaming big wheel.
Do we have production assistants? My coffee's cold.
Someone said, "Eat your fill of fish, war and death as a result." Question.
Full of flesh?
Flesh.
Yes.
Yes. Back to the bear.
Flesh.
Bears probably eat fish too. Anyways.
Not this bear.
So what's the other part of the question? It would.
War and death as a result. Question.
Yeah, I mean, I think that empire was pretty powerful,
Yeah.
and they did a lot of destruction.
Which, again, that's God giving them
Yeah.
directive. So that's it's kind of difficult to wrap your head around, but that's what you have to. He is sovereign.
Yes.
Yeah. Anything else from chapter 7 or 8? I mean, there's a ton more we could talk about.
Oh my
right now,
gosh.
but,
Yeah.
I mean,
What was it? It's interesting. The kingdoms they lost their power. The horns lost their power, but they still were allowed to stay. I wonder what that allowed to stay means.
Or why?
Yeah, to align with.
What was the purpose of letting them stay, or what's the purpose of including that in there,
Yeah.
saying they were allowed to stay?
Yeah, it's like, what does that mean? They were allowed to live for a period of time. So the other beasts had been stripped of their authority, but they were allowed to live.
I mean, I guess that's something that just came to my mind. Rewind a little bit through the Old Testament when the Israelites are conquering the Promised Land, they're called occasionally to completely destroy, like a people group, to go in and completely destroy them. So their laws, everything wouldn't be tainted, I guess. Like God's kingdom would be established, or his nation, his people would be established there. And maybe this is contrasting that.
Ah, okay.
Okay, I think we're about at that time. I think.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
That went fast.
it did.
So next week is Daniel, chapter 9.
Chapter 9.
Chapter 9. So, yeah. Thank you all for joining us. I think that's about everything I see online as well. We'll see you next week.